All right, we're very picky on the time. I keep looking at my clock here. All right, and protecting your collection. We'll talk about that here in a second. So, educating yourself. Research those significant purchases. If it's a pop, if it's a $15 pop or whatever, maybe probably not a big deal. But if you're looking at that one hole in your collection that's an item, it's like New York Comic Con or San Diego Comic Con this year, they came out with a stupid Doctor Strange pop that they only had 400 of them printed up. So the cheapest, they're selling for like $200 and $300 on eBay. I'm not paying $200 or $300. It's the only Doctor Strange pop I don't have. But I will keep watching and waiting for that price to come down because I need it. It's got to fill that hole in my collection. That's the only Doctor Strange pop I don't have. I've got all the Walmart exclusives, the Marvel boxes, the San Diego Comic Con. It's just this last one. It's the Eddie Funko one. They've done these weird editions with Eddie Funko, which I'm not a big Funko guy, but I guess Eddie Funko is like the creator of the Funko Pops or whatever. They basically put in these different costumes and they call it Eddie Strange and Eddie whatever, and they make them exclusives. So you gotta be really careful with that. And vintage versus repops, like I talked about. Is it actually old or not? Like anything that's worth anything, what do you think people are gonna try to do to it? Reproduce it. Can they make a piece of paper look like it's 200 years old? Yeah, you stain it with tea, bury it in the ground, do whatever, antiquing, all these different types of things. Are any of us that educated to really determine if that's truly a 60-year-old whatever or a 100-year-old whatever? Probably not. But just doing some of that extra research, asking the right questions, and getting a comfortable response back from the seller, it can kind of push your mind easily. It's like you and me. I answer questions for people all the time. I've got a Doctor Strange figure that was misprinted. The name Doctor Strange was actually printed on the box. And that's the only one I've ever seen. So we're trying to research to figure out, and the actual leg of the Doctor Strange figure is cockeyed in the clamshell, so it looks like when it was going through the assembly line, it's just, it might not have made everything it should have when it was putting it together. So I'm trying to figure out if that is indeed a one-of-a-kind figure, or if there's a handful more of these out there. Just because I haven't seen it, it doesn't mean that there aren't more of them out there. Online auction cautions, we talked a little bit about that, eBay versus Heritage. eBay, you can find some great deals. But again, ask questions and don't impulse buy unless it's some very insignificant dollar amount. It will always come back up from auction. Heritage will do buyer premiums, so in the end, if you're paying $100 for that comic book, you need to understand you're really paying $125 for that comic book. So you have to take that into account when you're making your max bids. Mylar Bags. This is the bane of any buyer. What does a Mylar bag do to a turd comic? Makes it look mint in a photograph. Anytime you see, because Facebook does comic book auctions now. You can sign up for groups to do comic book auctions on Facebook and stuff like that. And for any of the higher key issues and all that other stuff, they're always in Mylar bags. It's not because they want to get you or give you a more expensive bag with that comic. It's because the Mylar bags make them look shinier, look prettier than the comic actually is. So if I'm making a significant purchase, let's say I want to buy a Doctor Strange or a Strange Tales 110, which was the first appearance of Doctor Strange, and the only picture that's out there is in a Mylar bag, what am I going to tell the seller? Give me a picture with it outside the bag. I want to see it not in any bag at all. Show me the edges, show me the corners, show me everything else, because that's a significant purchase comic book. So Mylar bags, in almost every auction, when you see them come up, they'll always be in Mylar bags just because they make them look prettier when they're not. So it could take a 6.0 comic and make it look like an 8.0 comic. And is there a significant price difference in there? 6.0 to a 9.0? Yeah, most definitely on some of those older comic books. Prototypes. Here's one caution that I wanted to throw up here because you see this a lot of times on eBay. Anybody ever seen a comic book being advertised because it was the prototype for some key character? Like Doctor Strange or Captain Marvel. It wasn't called Captain Marvel, but they were prototyping him in another story before that character actually was fleshed out and came around. Why do you think that they try to do this? Is that comic book worth more money now if they can say it's a prototype for Doctor Strange or a prototype for an Iron Man? They're going to charge you a lot more money. The problem is back in the 60s, Ditko, all these artists, they reused a lot of the same art style, the faces, and some of the clothes for multiple characters. So they'll see a character that's got what looks like a cloak of levitation on it, and they'll say, that's a prototype for Doctor Strange. That's going to be a $500 comic book. No. Prove to me that that was actually supposed to be a prototype. Just because it's got similar art doesn't make a prototype. Don't get, in that niche where you're going to pay all that extra money, thinking you're getting a really rare prototype character book, when it's just the artist was just reusing his artwork. And in the 60s, it happened all the time. So be really careful with that. We talked about what's it worth to you. Compare and research. Compare. Over here, I just pulled this up a couple days ago off of eBay. It's Strange Tales 110, which is the first appearance of Doctor Strange. 9.2, which is an extremely beautiful copy for a 1963 comic book. Asking price, $39,999. Even if I wanted a high-grade slab of Strange Tales 110, there ain't no way in hell I'm paying 40 grand for this comic. But those are just asking price. Maybe you'll take less. Even if there's not a make an offer button on there, send him an email. Get the contact link and say, hey, I really like that book. I wouldn't put on that every way I raise the price, but here's what I'm willing to pay, because a lot of times they just throw that book in the water to see if somebody's going to buy it, right? If you actually give them a reasonable offer, they might take it, and you might get it, especially for those rare or higher graded comic books that you don't run across a whole lot of times. So be really careful. Few items need to be purchased now. That the compulsive buys really can cost us a ton of money. Be really careful with that. All right, so we've spent all this money on our collectibles. Where do we put them? At the beginning of the lecture, we talked about a lot of us put them in boxes in our basement. Our basement's pretty humid.